I'm just waiting for these big conferences, man, to just venture off away from the NCAA.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Odd Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and with me today, sitting in for my tag team partner, he's done a great job all week being a guest host, my man, son of Festus, missed that dude, Following Campbell. Following, welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us all week long. I appreciate it.
What's up, Coach, man? Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so on this Throwdown Thursday edition in segment one, we're going to talk about the Power 5 conferences. We're going to get into it because there's some moving and shaking going on. In segment two, more NIL news, and who better to talk about it than someone who would have made a lot of NIL money. But I digress. And in segment three, we're going to talk about officiating both in the men's and the women's game. And somebody who used to talk to officials, even though we said don't do that. So this ought to be good, man. So in segment one, Big Ten's off to a big start. So the Big Ten in 2024 will introduce a football schedule model that includes 11 protected matchups across the conference, eliminate division, and targets a robust overall rotation as the league expands to 16 members when it includes USC and UCLA. Following, it's called the, quote, Flex Protect Plus model, and it maintains a 9-game league schedule. I think that's a shot across the bow at the SEC for only playing 8, but they say pay me if you want a 9th game, but that's the SEC. And let me tell you some of the protected games. Michigan and Ohio State is protected. UCLA and USC is protected. Minnesota and Wisconsin's protected. Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Northwestern, Iowa, Nebraska, Maryland, Rutgers? When did that become a rivalry?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we protecting with Maryland and Rutgers? Hey, I'll tell you what we're protecting: low attendance. We want to make sure the attendance is low. Anyway, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois, Purdue. Teams will also have opponents that they play in both 2024 and 2025, and those are called two plays that will change for the 26-27 cycle. For example, USC and Penn State will play in both seasons, as well as UCLA and Nebraska. They're also going to have a divisionless model, which will feature the top 2 teams competing for the Big Ten championship, and tiebreakers will be announced later. I know USC is coming to College Park, so if I'm Maryland, you got to be a season ticket holder to get that game. So that's how I'm going to get my season tickets up. But Following, what do you think about the Super Big Ten? What do you think, man?
I like it, man. I think it's going to be interesting. And I mean, honestly, I'm just waiting for these big conferences, man, to just venture off away from the NCAA, to start their league, man. Like, I mean, it's slowly but surely coming in effect. But I think it's gonna be interesting, man. I want to see all the big schools play each other, man. And you know, the Big Ten is a good conference, so I'm excited about it, actually.
Yeah, and with some of that $80 million, did you hear Maryland basketball is finally building their own facility just for basketball? So
wow.
Big Ten money is real, and that news was announced a little bit earlier before the show.
Wow.
So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But
Yeah.
we're gonna move from the Big 10 to the Big 12. The Big 12 goes international. The Big 12 conference is extending its reach into, wait for it, Mexico, by announcing plans for men's and women's basketball games to be played in Mexico City late next year. Also, we're talking about bowl games when the Big 12 expands from 10 to 14 schools, when BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston officially join the league. Why Mexico? Well, let's tell you. Mexico is just down the road from many of the Big 12 schools. 5 current or future Big 12 campuses, Baylor, Houston, TCU, Texas, and Texas Tech, are located within 400 miles of Mexico. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have campus extensions in Mexico. So between having basketball there and possibly having a bowl game there,
Mhm.
Big Ten's just expanded even more. What do you think about that?
I love it, man. You know what I mean? I think it'll be good for college basketball, and it brings attention to Mexico. Like they love basketball just as much. I mean, if you're talking to a guy who's played, you know, in Central America and South America,
Yeah.
basketball is big out there. So I love it, man. I really do. I think it's going to, like I said, draw attention to it, and I mean, you never know. Like we could have I wouldn't want to say that, but I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good basketball being played there, and like I said, the excitement of them playing in Mexico is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and when they get that bowl game popping, I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's going to be pretty exciting too. Having a Big 12 sponsored bowl. Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about the Big Ten, and they're trending in the right direction, sir. We talked about the Big 12 going international. Now, following the closing segment, we're going to talk about the Pac 12, and they're not going in the right direction. Pac 12 schools are still playing the waiting game in terms of a new television contract. Arizona President Bobby Robbins said last week that he does not expect a decision concerning conference realignment to be made until Pac 12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff brings hard numbers to university presidents. Robbins says he expects numbers tied to the conference's upcoming television deal to arrive, quote, soon as the league enters its final year of their current television deal. Washington State's president Kurt Schultz told the school's regents last week that he expects to have a resolution by the end of the month. Robbins said he hasn't been in touch with Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yorbick, but continues to talk to everyone. By the way, did I tell you the Big 12 went to visit Memphis? So, yeah, this is not good for the Pac-12. Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah are rumored to be on the Big 12's list as they try to expand. The uncertainty is amplified by the Big 12 signing a 6-year, $2.2 billion deal with ESPN and Fox to run through 2031. Hey, ACC contract doesn't end until 2036, but that's the Big 12 wasn't in line for a deal. The Pac-12 was, but the Pac-12 was slow. Big 12 wasn't. And now following, Pac-12 is kind of hurting. So what are you thinking about the Pac-12 right now, sir, as we close this segment?
Yeah, they're slowly deteriorating. I mean, we've always. I've never been a fan of the West Coast teams, but them losing UCLA and USC is big. But I get it, man. It's all about money, and they're just not. That Pac-12 is just not generating enough. You know what I mean? So I totally understand why some schools want to leave, or I mean, it just makes sense.
Man, and we just talked about it. USC is going to be a College Park.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't think they recruit the WCAC and the Baltimore Catholic League while they here and saying, see, your parents can see you play.
Yeah.
Pac-12, we got to do something, man. It ain't looking good for you right now. But fans, when we get back, we're going to talk NIL and some state legislation and some moves, and it's crazy. We'll be right back on the Ad Coaches Podcast.
The high school and college academic and athletic landscape is changing. The growing number of college transfers, as well as student athletes being able to profit off the use of their name, image, and likeness, has given student athletes the freedom and power to make life-changing decisions. That is why it is important for student athletes to be properly informed throughout the decision-making process. The difference between success and failure is often measured not by yards, but by inches, and even the most successful coaches and players use outside independent consultants to help improve their decision-making, which improves their results. That is what the CKA Save Project would like to do for student athletes across the country, improve their academic and athletic results. Our academic and athletic consulting services assist student athletes with the college decision-making process. The CKA team of former high school and college coaches can provide student athletes an independent assessment of their academic and athletic skills to assist student athletes in their college decision-making process. Let the CKA team evaluate your academic and athletic ability to assist you in finding the right fit for your academic and athletic career. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free virtual consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches podcast and following's understanding that football money is just different money. Anyway, in segment 2, here's another NIL update, fans. NCAA President Charlie Baker said last week that he wants a federal law to regulate the way college athletics can be compensated for endorsement deals. Baker hopes that a bill can move through the House and Senate this fall because it's unlikely to get done during next year's election cycle. Welcome to politics. If Congress doesn't come through, Baker said, the NCAA has to be prepared to try to at least clean up name, image, and likeness compensation on its own. And good luck with that, because Texas just passed a new law that said the NCAA can't punish anybody in Texas for doing NIL. And I don't even have the full, write-up of that law. So let's take you back to the beginning, Fowler. In 2020, the NCAA lifted its ban on college athletes being able to earn money for sponsorship deals and endorsements in 2020, with only some broad rules in place that prohibit recruiting inducements and pay-for-play state laws. NIL has become a new arms race. We're all competitors. According to Missouri Athletic Director Desiree Reed Francois, she said during a NIL summit, name, image, and likeness can be a competitive advantage. So following, let's talk about the old people. Okay, Baker and other college sports leaders, from presidents, chancellors, even coaches such as Nick Saban from Alabama, who's 71, coming to Washington to push lawmakers to help regulate NIL. There's a real bipartisan effort being done. You also have senators like Tommy Tuberville, who used to be the head coach at Auburn, if you remember, trying to introduce bills. Yeah, that's gonna be quite interesting to see it not work. And there's a lot of blame going on. And here are some of the next steps before I get your thoughts. Baker said misinformation about NIL is the blame for the rush of athletes deciding to transfer and ending up with no place to play, and stories of unqualified agents taking huge cuts of NIL deal. Congress has the ability to do state preemption. That's what Baker said. The NCAA sorta, coulda, might be able to do that, but it's way more complicated. Baker also said he's concerned about potential Title IX implications because NIL opportunities seem to be disproportionately going to male athletes. I don't know if he's heard of the Cavender twins, but I think they did pretty well. And don't get me started on gymnastics, but I digress. Walker Jones, a former Mississippi football player and the executive director of the Grove Collective that supports Ole Miss athletes, said he would be wary of any law that mandates that NIL deals be made public. However, he's not against uniformity. Following, this is a lot to take in. And as somebody who helped put a university on the map, and we're very cautious with our wording, but there has been books written about the Mason effect. Any thoughts without losing any potential income streams?
Yeah,
because I have talked to Tony as well. That will be Tony Skint, fans, new coach, and he has had some choice words about how he thinks the Final Four team could have made a couple of dollars. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah, this NIL stuff is interesting, man. From as far as, I do think, it's all new, you know what I mean? So they're going to continue to add rules to it. I do think there should be some limitations, only because not every school can compete, but you got also, kids transferring almost, every other year or every year just to get more money, you know what I mean? And again, I'm all for the kids to get paid. But there has to be some sort of structure, so we don't have all these kids entering the transfer portal and not being able to get out. You know, they don't understand, like, there's so many people in the transfer portal. Then you got
there are more people in than slots available.
Exactly. So you can go in the transfer portal and not make it out, you know, thinking you're going to get some more money than you know, or money at all. So I do think there needs to be a rule put in. But then you got guys like Nick Saban, who's so used to winning, you know what I mean? But then you got other schools who can compete with that NIL money. So they're taking some of that talent, you know what I mean? So of course he wants to appeal some things and, you know, talk to certain people to, you know, switch things around. But I mean, it's kind of even a playing field for the top schools, you know what I mean? Yeah. But you got the lower schools who just, you know, kind of, you know, out of luck. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. I'm interested to see what rules they add and take and things like that. So, but I wish I was in this era, man.
Yes, so do I. You think we wouldn't have had some soup commercials or something? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we already do that? Man, we had fans during his playing career in high school, and the state of Maryland actually will allow students to have NIL. It's a little more in detail than that, but go do some homework. People would bring in Campbell soup cans, and if you don't think we would have reached out and said, "Hey, we got a kid."
Oh yeah.
Well, while I have you here, legitimate question. There has been talk about creating a sort of eligibility center type clearinghouse for NIL, but that means public disclosure of everything and everybody having to go to one funnel place to agents have to sign up and here's how much you're making, here's what you're doing. What are your thoughts on doing it that way? Would you be for or against that?
I mean, we all know what NBA players are making. We all know what NFL players are making. At the end of the day, when you start giving these kids, or not even necessarily kids, young adults, this type of money.
At public institutions, mind you.
Yeah, like
at state institutions.
Look, they're getting this type of money. You got to treat them like adults. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I understand, you know, why they would want to, you know, not give too much information out. But again, we hear about, you know, MLB players getting this much money and all these professional players. And at the end of the day, when you're getting this type of money, you're a pro. You're a professional. You got and they like if you're getting NIL money at a certain amount of like you're getting $200,000. You got to go out there and perform because it's not guaranteed next year. You know what I mean? Like salary, you can get a 4 or 5 year salary, like a contract. But these NIL deals is every year, so you got to go out there and perform.
And think about the women's basketball players. They take pay cuts to go to the WNBA because you get cost of living, you get your little check, and you get NIL, and then you go to W, you get just your check.
Exactly. Yep.
So it's interesting. I agree with you. So fans, when we get back to close out this week, a lot of rule changes in the basketball world. I got my basketball guy here. We're going to talk about some of these rule changes. We'll be right back on the iCoaches podcast.
Why should student athletes use the CKA SAVE Project academic and athletic consulting services? Over the past 15 to 20 years, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, business organizations, and others have increased their use of consulting services to improve their decision-making processes and results. Over the same time, the athletic and academic landscape has changed for high school and college student athletes as the NCAA has raised initial academic eligibility requirements for student athletes while decreasing the number of transfer restrictions. Former college student athletes have noted that they were academic and athletically unprepared for the rigors of college. Let the CKA SAVE Project's close to 30 years of academic and athletic experience help guide student athletes to increase success as we work to help student athletes achieve the goal of obtaining a college degree. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the iCoaches podcast in segment 3. We're going to update you in the summertime on the things you're going to complain about next basketball season. So we've got an update on the block charge rule, and remind me to call Robert Abney to get his thoughts on it. So fans, the guy that's sitting in front of you right now was not a big fan of taking charges. So, in my infinite wisdom, to try to motivate not just him, but his teammates, they used to get pizza and sodas for every charge they took. And it actually worked in terms of getting people, not necessarily this guy, but others to take charges. So, let's tell you about the new NCAA block charge call in men's basketball. The NCAA Playing Rules Oversight Panel approved rule changes last week that require a defender to be in position to draw a charge at the time the offensive player plants a foot to go airborne for a shot. If the defender arrives after the player has planted a foot, officials have been instructed to call a block when there's contact. Defenders had to be in position to draw a charge before the offensive player went airborne under previous rules. The NCAA Men's Basketball Rule Committee members made the proposal after the NCAA members complained that, wait for it, too many charges were being called on those types of plays, which makes a guy like me following just a little. You gotta reward the defense, and you're still trying to punish the defense. The panel also approved reviews of basketball interference calls during the next media timeout. If an official called it on the floor, a shot clock reset to 20 seconds on offensive rebounds that hit the rim, and players being allowed to wear any number between 0 and 99. A timeout also will be granted to an airborne player with possession of the ball, and a non-student bench personnel will be allowed to serve as peacekeepers on the floor if an altercation occurs. Following, a lot to digest. Share your thoughts on any of these rules. I'm sure you have no interest in charges.
Definitely have no interest in charges, but it makes it more difficult for the refs. And I've never been a ref. I'm not a ref. That's for them to have to look and see how it's making things difficult, man. I think so. You got to see if the guy's foot is planted and see if he's in the right position. It makes it a little more difficult. But as far as having more members able to come on the court if somebody's hurt or things like that, I mean that's fine. But the charging stuff, I'm not a big fan. I don't take charges.
You are going to be as a coach now. I can hear you now saying, "What? He had position." Nope. Yeah. Under the new rule, not position anymore. So, all right, rule changes are coming in the women's game too. The NCAA is changing its penalty for delay of game violations in women's basketball and adding a new rule on flopping. Players would no longer get charged a technical foul for certain delay of game violations, including the one Iowa star Caitlin Clark got called for in the Hawkeyes championship loss to LSU. The All-American received a technical foul, according to a pool report after the game, because she didn't pass the ball to an official after a foul was called late in the third quarter. That was deemed to be a delay of game by officials. Since it was the second delay of game violation for Iowa, Clark was charged with a technical foul. Players receiving a personal foul when they are assessed a technical foul in college basketball, and the foul was Clark's fourth of the game. Under the new rule, that play would have resulted in the team getting a technical foul instead of Clark. As for flopping, players will be issued a warning on the first offense, and a technical foul will be charged for each subsequent infraction. Under the new rule, the second and subsequent flop calls will add to the team foul count, but will not count for a player's 5 fouls leading to disqualification. The committee hopes this change will reduce instances of players trying to fool officials by flopping either on the offensive or defensive end. The NCAA rules panel also approved reducing the restricted area arc from 4 feet in a lane to the area directly underneath the basket. Defenders cannot establish legal guarding position directly underneath the basket. Again, we punish the defense. Previously, secondary defenders had to be outside the restricted area to draw an offensive foul on the player. Other rule changes involve wearing any number from 0 to 99, and schools will no longer have to submit a waiver for players that don religious headwear, provided it's safe for competition. Finally, the Women's Rules Committee also were concerns about the increase of intentional fouls, technical fouls, and disqualifying fouls last season, as well as bench decorum and incidents of misconduct. Those will be a point of emphasis for officials this year. Again, following, that's a lot to take in. You have your notes. Any thoughts on the rule changes for the women's game now? Because Caitlin got a technical.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I didn't know that was a second delay of game technical foul. But I thought she deliberately, threw the ball away. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a delay of game.
Yeah. I mean, it's a delay of game, but it's like we saw the frustration. It's like she just threw the ball away. And if I'm a ref, that's a tech. I don't care what point of the game it is. It's like we saw you do it deliberately because out of frustration, and you threw the ball away. You know what I mean? So I would have done the same thing as a ref. But it makes sense as a delay of game. Like that is a delay of game. You know what I mean? So that makes sense. But it did give her a fourth foul. So
don't throw the ball away.
Don't throw the ball.
You can hit me now. Don't throw the ball away.
I agree. I'm glad the ref made that call, because any other ref, could have been like, you know what, that's Caitlin Clark. I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm just going to let it go. Let it go. But I'm okay with the rule changes. The flopping.
What about the flopping? Talk to me about the flopping, man.
The flopping is actually starting to be part of the game. It's making it annoying. So I do like the fact that they're going to point it out. Like if it's really bad, I do feel like there should be a tech. Or I understand the warning, but if they do it twice, come on now, like it shouldn't be.
Fans, so you'll know, following sees in person about 20 to 30, and I might be undercutting them, women's games, with his work at George Mason. So he can speak to the flow of the game being changed in part to the flopping, but I want to make sure our fans knew that.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of benches. Mike got on me because I'm sick of the bench and the different moves and the dancing and standing. When you sit down, stand up, cheer, and then right back down.
Right back down.
Just, y'all dancing and arrows and you're in the way. There ain't but so much. Fans don't really understand this, but there is not a lot of room on the sideline, and people got big feet, and they're like 15 chairs on the bench, and why are you on the bench? So pop the whole bench. I'm about tired of them. But Mike says I'm old now, so
that's what the young crowd likes, man. I get it, it's cool, but I'm with you, man. We don't need too much of that.
Anyway, finally, fans, Charlotte and UVA might be having some arguments moving forward. Charlotte basketball coach Ron Sanchez resigned last week after leading the 49ers to their first 20-win season in a decade, and he was soon announced as a member of Tony Bennett's staff at Virginia. Sanchez has deep ties with Tony Bennett as they worked together in Washington State when Tony Bennett was the head coach there. He was also an original member of Bennett's coaching staff at Virginia, where he served from 2009 to 2018 before taking the Charlotte job. In 5 seasons in Charlotte, he was 72 and 78, posted 3 winning seasons, including going 22-14 and winning the CBI title, College Basketball Invitational, if I'm not mistaken. The school had 4 consecutive losing seasons prior to his hiring. Following, I saw this move, and I was paused because, man, we all have the goal of being a head coach, and he was a head coach, and he stepped back to be an assistant for his good friend. What do you think about that move before we close?
Yeah, it's interesting. But I like the fact that he's working with a good friend of his. You know what I mean? So that's probably one reason why he did that. Resigning as a head coach. Sitting that hot seat, man, it can take a toll on you. You know what I mean? So I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? He's working with a good staff and a good coach. So I'm okay with it.
All right. Well, fans, We have come to the end of another episode, Fowler, and thank you for sitting in all week, coming through in the clutch. We appreciate it. Any last words before we let you go for the week, sir?
No, man, thanks for having me, man. You're doing a great thing. I love this podcast, man, and it's just glad to be here.
All right. So on behalf of Fowler and Campbell and my tag team partner, Coach Mike Francis, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast, and we will see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach Franchize. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches podcast.